There's a building in this city that shouldn't exist. No one built it. No one remembers seeing it. And yet, it's there. For Ethan Cole, the city had become a labyrinth of dead ends and overpriced shoeboxes. He'd spent weeks scrolling, calling, and walking away from places that felt more like cells than homes. The search had worn him down, leaving him with a quiet desperation that gnawed at the edges of his resolve. He was just looking for a cheap apartment, a place to simply exist without the constant pressure of a city trying to squeeze him out. And then, late one night, buried deep in the digital classifieds, he found one that seemed too good to be true. The address was decent. The rent was a fraction of the market rate. But the photos were strange, impeccably clean, yet devoid of any personality, as if generated by a machine that had only ever been told what a room was, but not how people lived in one. There was no furniture, no scuff marks, no life. Just empty space and perfect angles. Against his better judgment, a flicker of hope, or perhaps exhaustion, made him reach for his phone. He called the number. It rang only once before a woman answered. Her voice was a monotone, calm and cold, like the surface of a frozen lake. There was no greeting, just silence waiting to be filled. Ethan stumbled through his introduction, asking about the apartment. "It is available," she stated, not asked. "Come tomorrow. The door will be open." Before he could ask another question, about a landlord, a key, a lease, the line went dead. The abrupt click echoed in the silent room. The next day, he found the address easily. The building stood exactly as the vague directions implied, a concrete titan that seemed to absorb the light around it, casting long, distorted shadows even in the fading afternoon. It was a place that felt disconnected from the rest of the city, an island of silence in a sea of noise. When Ethan arrived, the building was there, immense and waiting, but no one else was. No doorman, no tenants coming or going, no distant sounds of life from the windows above. Just the low hum of the wind whistling past the concrete facade. The heavy front door, as promised, was slightly ajar. No security, no mailboxes, no sound. The hallway smelled like dust and rain. Lights flickered as if powered by something not from this world. He found his apartment 407. The key was already in the door, but he never told them which room he wanted. That night, footsteps echoed above him, slow, heavy, dragging. But his was the top floor. He checked. No one there. At the end of the hallway, a tall man faced the wall. When Ethan blinked, the man vanished. The next morning, a cold, gray light filtered into Ethan's apartment. The strange hum of the building seemed to have followed him, a phantom echo in his ears. Sleep had offered no escape, only disjointed dreams of endless hallways and doors that wouldn't open. He needed answers. Fueled by stale coffee and a growing obsession, he sat at his laptop, determined to anchor the impossible events of the previous night in the solid ground of digital fact. He started with a simple search: Building 47. The results were a digital shrug. Nothing. He dug deeper, peeling back the layers of the internet. The official city registry, a database of every single plot of land, had no entry. It was as if the ground he stood on just hours before simply didn't exist in the city's official memory. He pulled up satellite maps, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Where the imposing brick facade of Building 47 should have been, Google Maps showed only an empty, weed-choked lot, a forgotten gap between two other structures. He scoured historical archives, searching for demolition permits or old photographs. He found nothing. It wasn't just that the building was gone, it was as if it had never been there at all. Frustrated, convinced this was some elaborate digital glitch, he decided to see the empty lot for himself. He hailed a taxi, the worn leather of the back seat a small, comforting anchor to reality. He gave the address, the words feeling foreign and absurd on his tongue. The driver, a man whose face was a roadmap of the city's history, glanced at him in the rearview mirror.
Building 47, that place burned down in 1996.
The driver continued, his voice low and gravelly. Big fire. Took the whole block with it. Tragic. Haven't heard that name in decades. Ethan let out a short, nervous laugh. A fire. Of course. That explained the empty lot, the lack of records. It was a simple, logical explanation. The strange residence, the flickering lights. His mind must have been playing tricks on him, exhausted and suggestible. The relief was so immense it felt like waking from a nightmare. He paid the driver and got out, deciding to walk the rest of the way home, the fresh air a welcome antidote to the building's lingering chill. He laughed at his own foolishness, until he reached his corner. The familiar green sign for Oak Street was gone. In its place was a rusted blue enamel sign that read Elmwood Avenue. He froze. That wasn't right. He'd lived on Oak Street for 5 years. He looked around, a cold dread seeping into his bones, far colder than the morning air. The storefronts were different. The familiar cafe on the corner was now a dusty, shuttered bookstore. A car drove past, a model he hadn't seen on the road in 20 years. It was his street, yet it wasn't. Every detail was subtly, terrifyingly wrong. The world he had stepped back into was not the one he had left. Every night, the apartment changed shape. Walls stretched, doors moved. The mirror reflected things that weren't in the room. He tried calling the ad's number again. The robotic voice said, "This line has been disconnected since 1996. That night, knocking at his door. He looked through the peephole and saw himself standing there, smiling. The building continued its silent campaign of psychological warfare, its latest move both blatant and baffling. In the lobby, where the mailboxes used to be, a new door had appeared overnight. A solid slab of industrial steel, cold and imposing, bolted directly into the crumbling plaster. It was painted a flat, sterile gray, the kind you see in morgues or military bunkers. Stenciled in stark black letters was the designation, B-47. There was no handle, no knob, not even a keyhole. It was a seal, not a door. A statement. It felt ancient and utterly new at the same time, as if it had been torn from some other, colder reality and hammered into mine. The air around it was thick with the smell of ozone and fresh, quick-drying paint, a chemical tang that did little to mask an underlying scent of damp earth and something else. Something metallic and vaguely organic, like old blood. I felt an irrational pull towards it, a morbid curiosity that overrode all common sense. Behind it, I could sense a faint, low-frequency hum. It wasn't just a sound, it was a feeling, a pressure that vibrated up through the soles of my shoes and settled deep in my bones. It was the sound of a million hushed conversations happening at once, a hive of whispers layered into a single, monotonous drone. Compelled by an instinct I didn't recognize as my own, I pressed my ear against the freezing steel. The cold was a shock, but the sound that filtered through was worse. The whispers coalesced, untangling themselves from the drone. For a terrifying, crystal-clear moment, a single voice rose above the rest, and it spoke my name. Ethan. It wasn't a call, but a confirmation, a label, as if I were an item on an inventory list, being checked off. I stumbled back, my heart hammering against my ribs. My gaze fell upon the elevator beside the door. Yesterday, it had a full panel of buttons, most of them worn and faded. Now it was a blank, brushed metal plate. All the floors, the lobby button, the emergency call, all gone. Wiped clean. In their place, at the very bottom of the panel, was a single, pristine button. It glowed with a cold internal light, and etched upon it was a single word: down. There was no up, no escape, only a one-way invitation to whatever lay below that new, impossible door. The building was no longer offering choices, it was presenting a path. The hum from B-47 seemed to intensify, bleeding into the elevator, making the mirrored doors thrum with its frequency. I saw my reflection, but it wasn't right. It was warped. My features stretched and twisted as if viewed through troubled water. And behind my distorted image, for just a second, I saw others. Pale, translucent figures standing in the lobby with me. Their faces were blank, their forms indistinct, like old photographs left out in the sun. Then, one by one, they flickered and vanished, leaving only my own terrified reflection staring back from the abyss. The elevator moved, slowly. No numbers, no sound but the heartbeat-like hum. When the doors opened, Ethan wasn't in the basement. Outside stretched a blood-red sky. All around him, rows of identical buildings 47, each window glowing, each with silhouettes staring back. Ethan's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. A woman whispered, "Welcome home, resident 47. Then, silence. Police found nothing but ruins where the address should be. But deep underground, they discovered a sealed elevator shaft, still humming. Some buildings aren't built, they appear, and once you move in, they never let you leave. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more mysteries like